April is Autism Awareness Month, and 2nd of April is celebrated worldwide as Autism Awareness Day. I would like to mention here that while we talk about awareness, acceptance, and inclusion, it is not only about autism, it is also about the caregivers and the individuals around. It is our role as a community to ensure that we all connect with each other, make ourselves more aware, accept, embrace, and support each other. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Sushma Tripathy, joining you from Mumbai. On the behalf of the team Spectrum Autism, I welcome you all on the 73rd Talk to Expert series. We have been celebrating fabulous FabDads every Friday under our FabDad feature. So gracing this session today is one of the FabDads, Mr. Sowmyanarayan Srinivas. He is joining us from Bengaluru, and he's going to talk about role of a father figure in the parenting journey. Sowmyanarayan sir is a consulting professional with 24 years of working experience. He has worked in Indian startups and large multinational organizations. He's passionate about emerging technologies and has spoken in several platforms about it. He's also published various articles and books in his field of expertise. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the Talk to Expert series.
Thanks, Sushma. Thanks for inviting me to this session.
Hope you are having a good day.
Yeah, all good and all set.
Yeah. Sir, I'll quickly, jump to my first question because we have a list of questions and we want to have more and more information from you. So I just want you to, brief and let the audience know something about you as a person.
Sure. So you already mentioned I'm kind of living in Bangalore. So my entire life is actually literally exactly in two halves. I grew up in Delhi, did my engineering in Delhi College of Engineering. So that was the first half. And then the second half has all been in Bangalore, doing my MBA, working here. Got married in Bangalore and have two daughters. We're going to spend some time talking about the elder one, Aditi, today, who's on the spectrum. The younger one is 6. Quite a bit of age difference between the two, and deliberately so, and we'll cover a bit of that as we go through the session today. She is neurotypical, and then my wife, Shweta, she used to work for Ernst & Young, and then once we diagnosed my elder one, she decided to quit. So that's the family, and about myself. Now, kind of call myself a local Bangalorean, given the amount of time that I've spent here.
Wonderful. As you mentioned that we'll be talking about Aditi, and I'll directly go to the same thing that I want you to share that when you came to know that Aditi is on spectrum, what were the very first prompts which raised the flag for you?
So Aditi was born in 2005, right? And the reason I'm kind of giving the time frame is over the last, I would say, several years, at least the broad awareness and coverage on autism and autism spectrum has grown a bit. But way back when she was born, the level of awareness was not necessarily the same, at least in India, right? And then when she was born, there were no kind of flags or indicators that told us that there could be something else that could be happening. And so the first few indicators were when she did not kind of start babbling as you would expect. She hadn't, in fact, also crawled and walked. So the milestones got delayed. And as you know, in India, I think anybody and everybody, your relatives and the neighbors, everybody get involved in a discussion and in a kind of decision in some form, right, when such things happen. So everybody had their theories, but at some point when she was about 18 months old, we decided to kind of check with our pediatrician again to say, is there something really concerning at this point that we should be looking at, right? And so we started going to specialists at that point. And that's when I would say the diagnosis evolved, right? Because one thing that if you look at, especially with children in autism, specifically with Aditi, the social anxiety levels are very high. So when you take them to a specialist, they will not necessarily be willing to cooperate and show. So I would say the first few diagnoses were not necessarily the right ones, but directionally indicating that it could be broadly in the spectrum. And of course, at that point, what we did was we went to almost every specialist in Bangalore, right? Because even for us, it was a little bit of getting to know, right? Because we were not familiar with autism and autism spectrum at that point, and so really to know what this is all about, right? What should we be even doing? And are we getting the right diagnosis and the right support, right? And every parent that's listening in, that's probably the first question that comes to everybody's mind. It's very natural that when you hear something like that, the first question is this right? And so what should I be doing next? So we did all of that, and so I'd say that's how the first few months, maybe even a year, kind of turned out to be. But once we kind of got a sense of where we are headed, it's been more about just making sure that we stay on track and we stay focused on everything, right? But that's how the journey was, right? So she didn't walk, or rather she didn't crawl, and then we kind of supported her to walk. Her speech was delayed, and obviously she's non-speaking, so she still doesn't speak. And then she only used to have mashed foods because she had sensory issues in the gum, and her teeth came out late. So some of those were kind of indicators, I would say, but there's probably a much broader set of indicators. But for us, those are the ones. So
yeah, I think you rightly mentioned that the time frame in the very beginning, because that gives a sense of it gives an idea to the audience also that you're talking about which year. And when we compare to 2023, there are a lot of awareness, and there's a lot of already a lot of been talked about. So people know that these are the flags to be raised, or these are the pointers which needs to be checked. And as you mentioned, so like you went to the a specialist and you took care of Aditi in general and as whole. Is there any specific program or support program what you preferred, in those initial days, which you picked up and like this is what we are going to do, like in pointers, and these are the programs we will take, and this is how we'll do.
Honestly, there's no straight answer for this question, because the reason it's called autism spectrum is because it's truly a spectrum. And within the spectrum, within specific parameters, there are, see, everything will boil down to an individualized plan and a therapy, right? Now, while it's easier said, but it's more difficult to get done, because there are a lot of good therapists, but what's more important is your child getting used to the therapist, right? So we historically, see, if you look at in our world, right, I think the first thing that people expect is everybody speaks. And so you can imagine, as a non-speaking child, the priority seemed to focus on, okay, is there an opportunity to get speech? And so therefore, a lot of our focus was around speech therapies. And then obviously sensory issues around gross fine motor skills. So some of those kind of therapy in terms of making sure that our fine gross motor skills develop. But one of the things we realized is also there's a readiness aspect to it, right? Speech, obviously, given that she's still non-speaking, was not something that she was comfortable with. That experience of going to the speech therapist was quite harrowing and difficult for Aditi, right? One of the things we have learned is to take a step back. Because historically, I think, we are in this rat race eternally, irrespective of whether it's a neurotypical or a neurodiverse child, that we hesitate to take a step back. We always want to keep moving forward. And I think if there's one thing that I want to leave among the few things as a message, is one key thing is learn to take a step back, because it's very important to really say, if something is not working, then something is probably not right. If it's not worked for a few months, it'll probably not work, right? I mean, And so speech therapy was one among them. Some of the fine and gross motor skills as well was, we tried a few things. We tried taking her to a center. She felt the environment quite intimidating, right? And so then we thought, okay, why don't we get everything and set up almost like a mini room where she can actually practice these things. And we started getting a therapist home. That also actually did not work for her, because there was a time when the bell will ring and she will actually get very scared, assuming that irrespective of which part of the day it is, it's maybe the therapist. So we have had a few good, I would say, support teams, especially from the school that she went to initially. That wasn't a special school. I mean, there was a special setup for her. But we were then also told that, look, take a step back, right? I mean, you may want to go at the pace that she's comfortable with and not at the pace that you feel is right, which is again a key message to all parents, right? So learn to be patient. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon, right? And you run it like a marathon, because if you let go of all your energy in a 100-meter sprint, then you're going to struggle, because this is indeed a marathon for several years, right? And so therefore for us, I would say the way we prioritize based on what we looked, which may or may not necessarily been true, is around her fine gross motor skills and speech based on where she was. But that did not necessarily progress the way we wanted it to. So we took a step back and we said, let's see how Aditi feels comfortable. And then from then on, it's been dictated by how she wants to go, the pace at which she wants to go. And it takes time. One thing that maybe you'll keep hearing me say is patience, right? I mean, so this is not something that will happen the way we want it to be. It will happen when it happens. We just got to be there and make sure that we provide the right support.
So yeah, as you said that, be patient and take a step back, think over, and give yourself that much time, and do not rush for, any conclusion or any quick, solutions. So knowing that Aditi is on spectrum, then finding, the therapist, or finding a support system for her, making her more comfortable at home. How from there, now when we see Aditi, how that journey has been. So please, share that experience.
Yeah. So that's a great question, right? Because it's almost like my life, right? I mean, there is first half in Delhi, second half in Bangalore. It's almost like that. I mean, it's not been a gradual progression of saying, okay, how did this journey happen? And that's why the analogy that I had also given of the, the plane taking off, in the article that I had written briefly about, is it's actually almost the same, right? So you'll probably be there on the ground for a while. And then when you take off, you just go cover about 40,000 feet in just a matter of minutes. It's almost literally been like that with Aditi, right? Because, and all of that happened when we actually took her to a new institute from where she was, because we wanted to kind of focus on a few different skills. So we took her to this place called Ishanya, Institute. And then at Ishanya is where, well, it was interesting when we admitted her, right? Because both, the team at Ishanya and us, we were clear that what we share is our perspective of where Aditi is. And neither of us can conclusively say that that's really what the, real situation is. And the game changer was technology, right? Because, Ishanya wanted to kind of try technology to see how Aditi adopts. And so we started using this app called Avas, right? And from there, as they say, is all rest is history, right? So it took her a while. The keypad is the same as any other keypad. She was used to a laptop. She was used to kind of phones and all of that stuff, iPad and all of that stuff, right? So she picked up, started writing smaller sentences. Then I think started writing smaller stories, right? And that's where I think the whole idea of building an identity around maybe writing came in. And that's how the whole, the book that she has published, of course, Talking Fingers is one that she has contributed to, but her other book, Small Stories, Big Thoughts, came about as a set of short stories because that's how she evolved. And then, of course, it led to the whole, for which she's got the award, the author awards, right? That's With You Right Through. That's actually a novella of about 100 pages. And so that evolution was, I would say, quite rapid. Because Aditi enjoys this, right? So I think as a personality, if you look at Aditi, uh, and this is true sometimes even for me, right? When I look at Aditi, when she is not writing and she is writing, it will be completely two different personalities, right? Nobody that looks at Aditi in a general setting will actually say that she can write this much. And I can say that with confidence because sometimes even I get the doubt, right? But when she writes, and that's where I think the passion that she has and the focus that she has comes to the fore, right? So she can sit for hours and write, right? Not literally hours, right? I mean, so a couple of hours and so on, right? Not, she won't sit there for the entire day and write, just to be clear. But when she does that, the amount of focus and the intent that she shows is just amazing. And that's where it's important to anchor it to a skill that they like, right? Because she just plugs herself out of the world, just focuses on what she wants to write. And that was evident in the progression from a short story to a 100-page novella, right? Because in a short story, you set 2-3 settings, you are done. Here she sat for 6 months and wrote, and then I was amazed at the continuity, right? I mean, because she actually knew what she had written the previous day, what she's going to write, and so on. But getting to that skill and identity can take long, but once that button was switched on, I think it's just been rapid growth from there, I would say.
Okay, wonderful. I see, when you share that from where it started and how she has taken up writing, and you see two different personalities when it comes to writing, and when when she's not doing anything. So it also talks about how you as parent and the entire support system has worked on Aditi, and how Aditi has worked on herself to, brush up those skills which are her strengths, and while the other things are also taken care of. In this entire process, sir, I would want to know what are the challenges you faced? Because Aditi must be having her own challenges, but what is the challenge what you face and how did you overcome?
So, but I think first things first, I have to acknowledge that a bulk of the work on getting where Aditi is today has been done by my wife, right? Because she had a flourishing career with Ernst and Young. And then once the diagnosis was done, obviously, one of us had to make the call to kind of stay with her, right? Because it wasn't as if that we could live a normal life like any other parents, both of whom are working, where grandparents and others can take care, or you leave them in a play school and they'll take care, kind of thing. 2005, I would say, while both of us debated who should quit, maybe more societal norms than anything else that led Shweta to kind of quit, because those days at home dads was a much more rare, and I think we decided to stick to the social system, and I think that's probably the last time we did that. After that, I think as we progressed and we realized the journey that we are in, we decided not to bother about societal norms any longer, right? And some of these instances and incidences that happens in your life kind of makes you literally, for you to take a step back and say, where do I want to be, right? Do I really care? And if my priority is getting to focus on my child, then that should be the top priority. Why should we care? Who else thinks what? There are several challenges in the journey, right? Because what ends up happening is, and this is true of the combination that happens, right? If it's the dad that's closer and putting in more effort than the mom, and in our case, my wife and I, there are always perspectives, right? Because you always feel things could be different, but you also need to appreciate there's a reason that the thing is not different. And so therefore, one of the things is, as things evolve, at various points, we would look at and we'll say, hey, can she do this? Can she do that? But everything is actually an effort, right? And so what I typically say is I look at three dimensions, right? When I look at somebody like Aditi to say, where would we want her to be, right? And those three dimensions are, one is around self-help skills, right? That kind of determines how independently they can live, right? So, and that spectrum can be completely independent to completely dependent, right? And so therefore, what skills, how do we focus on that? The second is identity, right? In which Aditi's case is actually clear, and she wants to become an author, she's well on her way. And the third is obviously financial independence, which is a bit mixed up with the first two, because depending on where they are in their overall self-help, how they build their identity, then as a parent, you may have to focus on what's the level of financial independence. And each of this, the reason I'm going to this detail is that each of this has an implication and a perspective that may or may not be the same for both the parents. And so at a lot of times, I think the difficulty is less to do with the child, but to do with the parents reconciling themselves to the same kind of, directionally saying, yes, this is where we want to be as parents. There'll be difficult moments. I won't say it'll be easy, right? But two things I would say is important, right? One, let the child progress at the pace on the topics of interest that they have. Two, I think whoever is the closest is probably the best position to actually say what's the right thing to do and when is the right thing to do. And so therefore an open discussion and kind of making sure that there is enough alignment ensures that, you're all kind of moving in the same direction, right? So it's a long story for a short on the question that you asked, but I think the challenges are not just going to be about the child, but it's also going to be about, the parents themselves, how they kind of look at it, how they make sure that they are on the same page. Because one thing that I can definitely say, even I have ideas and things that I think can be done. It is a lot more difficult to do it than to think about it. And so trust the person who's doing it and be patient, right? Things will happen. So long answer, but hopefully who was listening and at least gave in a slightly broader perspective beyond the child, because sometimes I think we overly get focused on the child and the solution is not necessarily always the child, it's probably outside. And so it's important to take a broader perspective.
Wonderful. I think I'm sure our viewers are already taking notes of all the parenting goals and tips which you are sharing, and this makes so much sense while you are handling a situation, you are going through a phase, you are taking a break from your thoughts. It has to be a multi-dimensional thought process, not like a one-sided
Exactly.
or one-angle thought
Correct.
process. So Aditi is a celebrated author now. She's a blogger. She's a writer. So when you see her, creations, when you see her work, and recently she has been awarded the Authors Award. So how did you feel when you collected the award? What was your feeling?
I have traveled around the world. I've traveled extensively. If there was one flight that I dreaded to miss and wanted to make sure that I make it on time in my entire life so far, it was this flight to Delhi, because it was a big responsibility on me, a big moment for me to go there and receive this award on her behalf. You can't express it. In fact, I wanted my wife to go, but given there were only 3 days, taking both of them and or either only my wife going, while it's possible, but these are the nuances that comes in, right? Because she felt uncomfortable. She said, oh, would you be able to take care? Will everything be okay? But that probably is the proudest moment ever in my life, right? Because going there on the stage, receiving it on her behalf, and they were taking some group photos. I was hesitating to go in, and the anchor was like, "Sir, why don't you come up? You deserve this as much, right?" So, so that probably is the best moment in my life, I would say, because I would have never ever imagined, irrespective of whether she was on the spectrum or not on the spectrum, or something like this to happen when she was 17, right? So I would say the best moment of my life. So.
Absolutely. I think the feeling and that moment would be very surreal, as you have already described. And here, I would also want you to share a message for the new parent, somebody who has just come to know from the therapist or the specialist that the child cannot speak or is unable to communicate properly. So, what is the guidance or what is the advice you want to give to the parent?
See, one thing, and I think, Sushma, you and I spoke about this topic in one of the other forums as well, right? See, um, therapists are do-gooders, right? It will take a long time for them to tell you that this child will never speak. Excuse me. In fact, we have never been told so far that your child will never speak. But then when I look back at my journey, and again, this is going to be very difficult for parents to accept, right? And that is going to be the reality, right? But when they are willing to accept and move on, right? And they should take their time. Just because they are listening to me, I don't think they will take this, but it's a very emotional thing, right? And so therefore, I would say take your time. But when you are ready, keep one thing in mind, right? I think if there's something that you want to take away from looking at Aditi, non-speaking, as she keeps saying, is not non-thinking, right? And I love to use this word because by overly focusing on speaking, we are probably actually wasting time in the wrong space, right? So encourage them, give them the visibility, give them the broader exposure. Try and observe what their interests are, because you may actually be able to get to where Aditi is today, maybe much faster by focusing on those skills. And because once they pick up the skill, the pace at which it develops is just unbelievably fast, right? We just have to have an open mind. And one thing that I would say, right, to parents, who either just discovered that the child is on the spectrum, have discovered it a while back. We talk about inclusive society, it'll take a long time to get there. Don't bother about that. You stay focused on, your child, because that's your society for now. And so if you don't listen to the entire world, because the beauty is everybody wants to give advice, right? In India, they keep saying that all the way from your neighbor to your neighbor's dog to your family, on every topic, not just this, right? They would want to know and they would want to give advice. But in this case, if there are probably only two people that will know what the child wants, and the father and the mother, right? Go with your gut instinct, give the right exposure, don't overly obsess on speaking. And in some cases, it may happen, right? And in some, it may not. But if it doesn't, just don't bother, right? Things with so much of alternative communications and technology today, their ability to express will automatically evolve. But our ability to give them an identity is actually what counts the most. I would say focus on how do you want to build identity, right? That's probably the most important thing. And you would notice the change in the child at that point, right? I mean, the self-confidence and the way they respond to you in whatever shape and form that they use to respond to you will be unbelievable.
Wonderful. I think it is important for everybody, any parent. If you want your child to shine, give them that space, where they can create their own identity in their own pace. And our viewer, Padma ma'am, she says she has a message for you: a proud dad and a beautiful family that is the wind beneath Aditi's wings. Thanks for sharing your insight. This is a message that has come from Padma ma'am. And the journey which you have shared and the insights which you have shared, it brings me to our next question, which is a very significant one, a very important one. What is the role of parent advice, and why you as a parent think that it is extremely important?
Yeah, I think there are two parts to parent advocacy in my mind, right? So the first is for the parents who are either new parents that have just found out that the child is on the spectrum, or parents who have found out earlier. See, to be honest, it is not easy to accept and move on, right? It took us a while, and it takes different times for the two parents to come to acceptance as well, right? And all of that, in my mind, is a very natural part of the process. And maybe I'm just speaking out of experience, and we may or may not have followed this when we actually figured it out 17 years back, right? But one thing that I realized when I look back is it's important to share. But what is even more important for the listeners that are listening in and are looking for some insights is this is one of millions of stories that you will hear. None of those million stories will be the same. And the million plus one, which is your story, will not be the same too. But the reason parent advocacy helps is at least you know how different people have focused, how different people have succeeded. It gives you the confidence, one, that you will be successful. Two, most importantly, that you don't compare your journey, right? Your journey will be unique. It doesn't matter, right? If it doesn't follow the path that, let's say, I have just outlined, you are on the right track, right? Because no two journeys are same. Doesn't matter if it's on the spectrum or not on the spectrum. I would say no two journeys are same, period, right? Doesn't matter what the child is. But in the case of spectrum, more so. As a parent, you know the best. As you listen to these stories, it helps build your confidence that, if you stay at it, if you do the right things, things will change, things will happen. Right? So that's one important thing. I think it helps build the confidence in the community. Second is it's equally important for an inclusive society, right? Because when we talk about an inclusive society, we are far from there, right? In generally true of the world, more so in India, right? I think that acceptance has to start, in fact, right from the childhood, right? And I think, in fact, interesting, just today I saw an article that the Karnataka government, and I don't know about other states, in the 3 to 8 years education policy has actually encouraged all schools, government schools, private schools, to kind of build an inclusive community and start looking, not diagnosing, but start looking at behaviors that potentially need intervention, right? And I think that needs to be a movement, and that movement can only happen with parent advocacy and parents who have been through that stepping forward to really share their experiences of what could be expected, right? Because how different children react could be very different. And so therefore, what's important is a general awareness, especially in either a societal setting or in a classroom setting. So first of all, the teacher needs to be, in a flight, the crew needs to be aware, right? Otherwise, we see so many instances of airport not being able to handle, crew not being able to handle, because of the simple reason that awareness is still missing, right? So for us, these sessions are a step forward for the larger society to know that it takes all kinds to build a society. And for the parents who are looking for guidance, that you be at it, things will change, right? So don't give up. And don't try to move it at your pace. Move it at the pace that the child is comfortable with, and magic will happen.
Wonderful. On this note, we have another message for you from Dr. Malay Kantiji, and says that journey of Aditi's family as it defines a normative approach, and he's all love and support to you and the entire family. So what are the specific changes you feel there has to be seen in the society in terms of creating awareness and making it more inclusive?
First of all, I think just the awareness of being around children on the spectrum, or even adults on the spectrum, some of the behavioral aspects of how you can expect them to react to situations, and just the fact that they are the same part of the society. I think they have skills. Some of them are probably more deeper than anybody else in the world. I think if you look for the right things, you will find the right things. If you are looking to kind of find fault, you will find fault with everybody, right? So to me, it's the awareness and just knowing what this means and what could be some of the differences, but at the same time, what could be some of the strengths that brings to the table, right? Because and starting that from the early days, from the schools, is probably the best way to do this. Because and that's why I brought up the whole Karnataka government thing, because I felt that was a good initiative. I think that's what we need more of. If the children become aware, the society will by default become more inclusive. So I think we need to make sure that we start speaking about it. We start creating awareness, we start educating. And I'm sure over the next few years, our society will evolve to be a lot more inclusive and a lot more conducive for growth for everyone, right? Because inclusive is just half a step. It has to be conducive for growth as well, right? For people to build their identity, live their lives the way they want. I think inclusivity should lead to making it conducive for them to be able to live happily, in the society.
I think, yeah, that is very rightly said. And if our children, they know that what they need to do and what they don't, and they're much aware and alert about their surroundings. I think automatically that will create generations who are more aware and they're more accepting. And currently, in this, we talk about 2023, and you have seen the journey as a parent, as a father, as an individual. What is your message to the community?
See, I think my simple message is, and today happens to be, the Autism Awareness Day as well, right? As recognized by UN. I think the first thing to know is the spectrum is a lot more prevalent than we even know or are aware. And so therefore, it's a lot more part of the society than we tend to think. And what's important is to understand and to make it part of our lives, and not necessarily look at it as something special, right? Because I've always believed that when we talk about inclusivity and we start focusing on kind of how do we make it happen, that itself shows that there is an issue, right? The day when it actually becomes mainstream and we don't need to talk about inclusive is when we would have arrived as an inclusive society, right? And so to me, as a community, we need to work towards that, where everything is accepted and celebrated. It becomes a normal part of life. And we don't need to use the word inclusive to then make people aware that they have to take a step, kind of make it more accommodative, right? So I would actually say that that has to be a natural process. And to me, that the reason I kept emphasizing that begins with the children, right? If we start educating our children today, our society of tomorrow won't need to have a session on inclusivity. It would be inclusive by default, right? So that at least is my hope and my message. So.
Thank you so much, sir. You have been very patiently answering all our questions. I have one last request from you. What is that one message you want to give to all the FabDads?
Sushma, you've gone on mute.
So sorry.
No.
So you have been patient enough to answer all the questions, and it brings me to the last question, which is more of a message to all the dads watching you today and later. What is that one message you want to give to all the dads out there?
So first thing, don't get stressed out. And if you are the primary caregiver, then again, the same message, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. This is unlike an office project that you are on a timeline to get things done. So take care of yourself, take care of the child. Be open to ideas, be open to perspectives, but do what you think is the right, because repeated this multiple times and then repeated again. There is no one that knows more about what the child needs than you as the dad and the mother. You are in the best position to take to take the right decision. So I'd say take care of yourself, take care of the family. Don't be in a hurry. Things will happen, and it will happen for the good. But be patient and keep doing what you're doing.
Wonderful. On that note, to the viewers, I would also request that join us and take the inclusion pledge and share it with us. Tag your buddies, record us a second video saying that I so and so take the pledge to be inclusive and accept the unique. And as Sir has already mentioned that there are so many insights which we have already got. But for the dads, be patient, do what you are doing the best, and you know what you are doing. For your child, you know the best. You're the best person. On that note, thank you so much, sir, for joining us today, for giving us your precious time and sharing so many thoughts and your experiences. I'm sure that is going to help a lot of parents, a lot of listeners out there. For parents and caregivers and individuals, there are so many takeaways, and this session is definitely going to reach out to more and more people. Thank you to our viewers and the audiences who have joined us and who will be listening to us later also. In the end, I would just like to request everybody that come together, let us march together to make a neuro-inclusive society, to make a neuro-inclusive world for all. And on that note, I would sign off for today. See you soon on our next Talk to Expert series with another expert talking about the role of the community and many other topics. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Sushma. Thanks for inviting me again.